When Jenna told me her parents were thinking of moving closer, I didn't flinch. Cal and Doreen had always been polite, even warm on holidays, birthdays, the occasional drop-by. I figured a few months with them in the guest room wouldn't kill me. We had space, no kids by choice, just the two of us and our dog Murphy. Life in Boise was quiet, just how I liked it. Our backyard wasn't much, some grass, a grill, a couple of Adirondack chairs, but it was ours. I worked from home. Jenna commuted to her job at the university. We had a rhythm. They arrived in early March, pulling up in a silver SUV that looked too clean for a road trip. Doreen stepped out with a smile and a tray of muffins. Cal waved like he was already part of the neighborhood. The first couple of weeks went fine. A little tight in the kitchen, sure, but manageable. Doreen kept folding our laundry. Cal reorganized my toolbox. Small things. Then, one Saturday morning over coffee, Doreen asked if they could maybe grow a few herbs out back. Jenna lit up immediately. "It'll be nice, Logan. They're just bored. Give them something to do." I said sure. Why not herbs sounded harmless. 3 days later, Cal had drawn up a layout for raised beds. He was excited, said he used to garden back in the day. I helped him build the frames out of scrap wood. We dug up a corner of the yard together. Doreen brought out lemonade like it was a summer project from a feel-good movie. I even liked it for a while. It felt like something a family would do, like I was doing the right thing. Looking back now, I realize that was the last moment I felt fully in control of my home, and all it cost was a little dirt. By late April, the garden had doubled in size, then tripled. The original corner bed had sprouted 2 companions, then a narrow row of lattice fencing. Cal said it was to keep rabbits out. We didn't have a rabbit problem. Then came a tiny greenhouse kit he ordered online. It took up a chunk of the lawn where Murphy used to sunbathe. I said nothing. I kept telling myself this is temporary. Let it go. Be generous. But something had shifted. The garden wasn't a hobby anymore. It was a project, a mission. And I was suddenly a visitor in my own yard. One afternoon I watched from the kitchen window as Doreen scolded Murphy for sniffing near the planters. "Go on, shoo," she snapped, waving a trowel like it was a weapon. I opened the door. "Hey," I said. "He's just curious." "He almost crushed the basil," she muttered without looking at me. That evening I tried to water the tomatoes. Cal appeared beside me like I'd triggered a silent alarm. "Not like that," he said. "You're spraying the leaves. You want to get the base. Soak the roots." I paused, hose in hand. "I think they'll survive." He took the hose from me slowly. "There's a system here." Later I brought it up with Jenna while we were cleaning up after dinner. "It's getting a little much, don't you think? The fencing, the shed, the greenhouse." She wiped a plate. "They're just trying to stay active. It's not hurting anything. They're talking about building a compost station." She looked over. "So that's useful. I mean, you weren't exactly in love with the backyard before. That stuck with me. I wasn't in love with the backyard, but that didn't mean I wanted it annexed." By early May, they added a handmade trellis along the fence. Doreen called it her sanctuary. Cal painted little signs with herb names and nailed them into the dirt. It was starting to look like someone else's home, someone who didn't live here, didn't pay a mortgage, didn't ask. And the weirdest part, they didn't act like they needed permission anymore. It was a Thursday morning when I saw it. I let Murphy out like always, coffee in hand, barely awake. The sun hadn't even cleared the neighbor's roof yet. That's when I noticed the new post near the patio, clean pressure-treated wood, freshly hammered into the soil. Hanging from it, a hand-painted wooden sign, "Private property, do not enter." The lettering was bold, blocky, like it had been done with care. I stood there for a full minute just staring. I didn't touch it at first, Just let the weight of it settle in. Then I reached out and ran my fingers along the edge. It was smooth, varnished. Whoever made this hadn't thrown it together overnight. I yanked it out, not gently, walked straight inside and leaned it against the kitchen table. When Jenna got home that evening, I was still sitting there waiting. She saw it before she saw me. Her eyebrows lifted, then her face tensed. "You pulled it out," she said, like I'd broken something sacred. "Yeah," I said. "I pulled it out of my yard." She rubbed her forehead. "Logan, it's just a joke. My dad gets a little protective." "A joke," I said. "It has varnish." She looked tired. "He's proud of what they've built. Just let it go." I didn't answer. I didn't trust what would come out if I did. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room with the lights off, watching the backyard through the glass door. Around 10:30, Cal came out with a flashlight, moving slowly between the raised beds, like he was inspecting something. He knelt near the trellis, stayed there a long time. Then he walked to the exact spot where the sign had been. Just stood there staring at the empty dirt. He didn't replace it, just looked, then went back into the shed. I stayed up another hour just listening. The next morning I opened the storage bin where we kept the home documents. I pulled out the deed, my name in bold. No one else's. And for the first time since this all started, I thought, maybe it's time someone remembered that. The sign stayed on the table all day. I didn't move it. Neither did Jenna. She walked past it like it wasn't there, like if she ignored it long enough, it would become my problem alone. That evening I tried again. "I don't want signs in our backyard, Jenna." She didn't look up from her laptop. "It's not a big deal." "It is. You know it is." She shut the lid a little too hard. "Why are you making this into something it's not? You've never cared about the yard before." "That's not true," I said. "I care about people claiming what isn't theirs." She crossed her arms. "You're being controlling." That word stuck. Not annoyed, not upset. Controlling. Like I was the one drawing imaginary lines in the grass. I didn't reply. I went to the garage, found the file folder with the house documents, and pulled out the deed again. Brought it into the kitchen, laid it next to the sign. "You see that I said, my name, not yours, not theirs, mine." She stared at the paper, then walked away without a word. The next morning, Cal knocked on our bedroom door. "Can we have a civil conversation?" he said. "Clear the air." I agreed, not because I thought it would help, but because I was done pretending politeness was the same as respect. We sat at the kitchen table. He poured himself coffee from my pot without asking. "I think we've had a breakdown in communication," he began. "No," I said. "We've had a breakdown in respect." He smiled like I'd confirmed his theory that I was irrational. "Look, we've put time and money into that garden. It's become important for our routine, our well-being. It's not your land," I said. "But you keep saying it's your property." He leaned in, and Jenna sees it differently. She considers it shared space, family space. That made me pause. He saw it. "We're not going anywhere, Logan. If you want peace, you'll need to accept that." I stood, walked to the cabinet, pulled out a second copy of the deed, and dropped it on the table. "You'll accept this," I said. And that was before Jenna told me what she did with their money. She told me the next night like it was nothing. We were cleaning up after dinner, quiet, tight-lipped. I hadn't said much since the conversation with Cal. I could feel her watching me, but I didn't give her anything. I was done filling silences that weren't mine to fix. "I need to tell you something," she said finally. I kept rinsing a plate. "Okay, my parents gave me money. Last fall, from the house sale." I didn't say anything. I waited. I put $65,000 toward the mortgage. That stopped me. I turned slowly. "You what I didn't tell you because I knew how you'd react." My mouth went dry. You used $65,000 on a house that isn't in your name without telling me it's our house, she said flatly. And I was trying to help. By giving them leverage, she stepped back. It wasn't about leverage, it was a gift. They wanted to support us. No, I said. They wanted a stake. She didn't respond, just stared past me like I'd turned into someone unfamiliar. Maybe I had. I sat at the table, both hands in my hair, the same table where the sign had sat, where the deed still lay its sharp corners curling at the edges like it was tired of being ignored. They've done more for this house in 1 year than you have in 10, she added quietly. I looked up. That one hurt more than it should have. I didn't reply. What do you say when someone rewrites history right in front of you? I left the kitchen, grabbed Murphy's leash, and walked him until the sky turned navy. By the time I got home, the lights were off. She'd gone to bed. I stared out the back window. Solar lights flickered across the planters. The shed door was slightly ajar. It all looked permanent now, not like guests, like settlers. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I looked up the name of a lawyer a friend had mentioned once, Marcus Hill. Clean, efficient, no small talk. And when I called his office the next morning, I came home early that Thursday. A last-minute meeting cancellation, and honestly, I needed the quiet. But the minute I pulled into the driveway, I saw them, Cal and 2 other men I didn't recognize. One had a tape measure clipped to his belt, the other held a set of blueprints rolled under his arm. I didn't even turn off the engine before I got out. "What's going on?" I asked, walking across the lawn. Cal barely flinched. "Just some landscape brainstorming." "Who are these guys?" "This is Bruce," he said, gesturing to the taller man. "Contractor friend. We were thinking about a pergola, maybe a raised deck. Possibly a water feature." I looked at Bruce. "You doing a job here?" Bruce raised his palms. I was told it was all approved. Just looking around. Approved by who? Jenna's voice floated from behind me. By me. I turned. She stood on the patio with her arms crossed like she'd rehearsed the pose. Calm, passive, waiting for me to lose it. "You went behind my back again," I said. "It's a backyard, Logan," she said. "You've made it into a battleground. I thought if we did something constructive, maybe we'd all feel better." I laughed, once sharp. "Your idea of peace is permanent construction. I never asked for, I'm tired of asking," she snapped. "You say no to everything. They've done more for this house in a year than you've done in 10. That one landed, and not softly. I didn't say another word. I just turned, walked inside, packed a small duffel bag, grabbed Murphy's leash, and left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just drove to a modest hotel on the east side of town and checked in under my own name. No questions, no explanations. That night, Murphy curled up by my feet while I stared at the ceiling fan and tried to remember the last time I felt like the house was mine. The next morning I went back for some work clothes while no one was home. At least that's what I thought until I walked into the kitchen and smelled burnt toast and fresh coffee. Asking about shared space, I was asking how to take it all back. I walked through the front door and stopped cold. The scent hit, first burned toast, strong coffee. Then the sound of fingers on keys, steady and deliberate. I stepped into the kitchen and there he was, Cal, sitting at the table, my laptop open in front of him. He didn't even look up. "What the hell are you doing?" I asked. He kept typing, just checking something. "On my computer I was pulling up the backyard plat," he said calmly. "Needed to confirm measurements." I walked over and slammed the laptop shut. He leaned back in the chair, still holding his mug. "No need to get dramatic. You're in my house using my computer without permission." "You left it unlocked," he said with a shrug. "I left because your presence made it impossible to breathe." He set the mug down slowly. Let me be clear, Logan. If you keep pushing like this, Jenna's going to walk. And if she walks, guess who gets full support from her family in court? I stepped in close. Are you threatening me? He smiled. No, I'm preparing you. I didn't answer. I just turned, grabbed my bag, and walked straight out the door. Drove directly across town to Marcus Hill's office and asked to speak to him in person. He took me in that afternoon. I laid everything out, every inch of it. The garden expansion, the sign, the 65K, the construction plans, the laptop, the threat. Marcus listened, carefully asked precise questions, didn't waste time. When I told him about the money Jenna used without telling me, his brow tightened. Was it gifted or loaned? No agreement. Nothing in writing. He nodded slowly. That helps. If it was undocumented, we can argue it was a gift. But if they try to frame it as a loan, it opens complications, especially in divorce. That word sat heavy between us. I exhaled. So what now? Marcus leaned forward. Now we stop playing defense. Over the next 20 minutes we discussed options, legal protections, boundaries, real ones. By the time I left his office, I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was preparing my own map, one with exits, documentation, and leverage. I hadn't spoken to Megan in years. Jenna's sister always kept her distance, family tension, different cities, different lives. But something about Cal's smirk, his quiet certainty, made me reach out. I called her late on a Sunday afternoon. She answered on the third ring. Logan. Yeah. Look, this is awkward, but I need to ask you something about your parents. A pause, then a sigh. Let me guess, garden problems. Something like that. We met the next day at a diner halfway between Boise and Reno. I brought copies of the deed pictures of the backyard and a screenshot of Cal using my laptop. She didn't need them. They did it to me too, she said, stirring her coffee. Moved in after selling their house. Said it'd be temporary. Took over my basement. Installed shelves. Curtains, called it their space. When I asked them to leave, they accused me of being ungrateful. What did you do? Had to evict them. Quietly, with a lawyer. She handed me a folder. Legal paperwork, restraining language, a dated timeline. Her name, notarized signature, everything. I can sign a statement, she added. Whatever you need. I drove straight from the diner to Marcus's office, dropped the folder on his desk. He smiled. This is gold. Now it's not just overreach. It's a pattern. We began assembling everything: photos, footage, documents, texts from Jenna admitting she wasn't on the title. Megan's sworn statement sealed the tone of the case. That night, I sat in my hotel room flipping through every file we'd gathered. They thought they were methodical. They weren't the only ones. The courtroom smelled like old paper and nerves. Cal wore a gray suit and that same smirk he always carried when he thought he'd already won. Jenna sat beside her attorney, composed like this was just an uncomfortable errand she'd get through with minimal emotion. Marcus stood calm and deliberate, every step of his argument clean. He laid it all out, the title with my name, only the financial records showing. The mortgage was solely in my name, the lack of any written agreement on the $65,000, the video of Cal calling the garden our property on a contractor's mic, the blueprint consultation, the footage of him accessing my laptop. Then he brought out Megan's affidavit. Her voice echoed in the room, even though she wasn't there. They did this before. The judge didn't like any of it. Jenna's lawyer stammered through his response, tried to reframe it as a miscommunication, family dynamics, misplaced generosity. But the judge didn't see generosity. He saw trespassing, manipulation, entitlement wrapped in politeness. He ruled clearly Jenna had no legal claim to the house. The $65K was considered an undocumented contribution, legally a gift unless proven otherwise. Cal and Doreen were to vacate immediately. A no trespass order would be issued. Violating it meant arrest. I didn't smile. I didn't look at them. I just stood up, walked out of that courtroom, and drove home. The garden was still there, the shed, the lights, the stupid little sign leaning in the corner. But now it was all mine again, and I knew exactly what needed to happen next. The next morning I called a demo crew. By noon, the shed was in splinters, the raised beds ripped out, the trellis collapsed in a heap of wood and wire. I didn't watch the whole thing, I just heard it. The sound of undoing of something finally giving way. That evening I stood over the fire pit with the private property sign in my hands. The letters were faded now, but the message still pulsed like a bruise. I dropped it into the flames. It curled, cracked, and disappeared. Then I gathered the materials, wood fencing, greenhouse panels, and listed them online. Everything sold within a week. I took the $300 I made and donated every cent to the local animal shelter, in Cal's name, tax receipt and all. A few days later, Jenna showed up to collect her things. She didn't knock, just walked in like muscle memory hadn't caught up with reality. She looked around, the empty walls, the quiet kitchen, the flat yard out back. "You really did it," she said. I nodded, every inch. She picked up a box of her clothes and paused at the door. "You know you'll be alone forever, right?" I didn't flinch. Better alone than overgrown. She didn't say goodbye. After she left, I sat on the back steps with Murphy beside me. The yard looked strange without all the clutter. Bare, honest. I started rebuilding not out of revenge, just because I could. A new deck just wide enough for a grill and a chair. Some fresh soil. A few native plants I chose myself. No signs, no fences, no shed. Just space that belonged to no one else but me. And for the first time in months, I heard nothing but wind in the trees and the slow, steady breath of my dog beside me. That night, under an open sky, I let the quiet take up every inch of what they tried to claim.